Number 3 in the name of Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan.
Thanks, Ciarán Corley. My question is in relation to the homeless situation, and we have the Pathways to Home model, and looking in particular at the supported temporary accommodation aspect of that, and I was looking for an update on that because we know the situation, the crisis in the situation, but in particular for those who are coming out of drug treatment or those who are still in addiction.
Thank you. Minister.
My department's role in relation to homelessness involves the provision of a national framework of policy, legislation and funding to underpin the role of housing authorities in addressing homelessness at local level. Statutory responsibility in relation to the provision of accommodation for the homeless persons and related services rests with the housing authorities. It is a matter for individual authorities to determine the level and category of accommodation to be included in their funding programme. Emergency accommodation options may include hostel, bed and breakfast type accommodation and temporary support arrangements. The Government's homelessness policy statement, which was published by my colleague Minister O'Sullivan earlier this year, emphasises a housing-led approach to homelessness. This is about accessing permanent housing as the primary response to all forms of homelessness, and it should reduce the amount of time spent in homeless services, in particular emergency accommodation. Homelessness is a very complex phenomenon, and measures to address it require an integrated approach across government. The combined forum of the cross-departmental team on Homelessness and National Homelessness Consultative Committee provides an opportunity for all the statutory and non-statutory stakeholders to discuss and consider appropriate approaches to tackle homelessness. Both the HSE and the Department of Health are represented in this forum. Dublin City Council, as the lead authority for homelessness in the Dublin region, works in partnership with a range of voluntary and statutory agencies to deliver services to people experiencing homelessness under the Pathway to Home model. The Dublin region has been implementing an integrated model of service provision to homeless people, which includes supported temporary accommodation. Over 1,500 beds are provided nightly to homeless people in Dublin, and of these, approximately 80 beds have been provided under the current cold weather initiative. The delivery of care, personal and health supports for recovering drug misuse users is not the responsibility of my department or housing authorities, but it is a matter within the competence of the Health Service Executive.
Deputy O'Sullivan.
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I think this is part of the problem, is that accommodation for those who are in recovery from addiction, it's falling between two stools. It's falling between your department and the Department of Health. And the reason for my question is in relation to the difficulty with drug-free accommodation, particularly in the Dublin area. And I'm not just talking Dublin generally. And anybody who's worked with those in addiction knows that we need the optimum circumstances for those who are in recovery to continue in recovery. And what's happening at the moment is in some of the hostel type accommodation, those who are currently using, because there is a crisis, are being put into the same accommodation as those who are drug free. And I met a group of young men recently in one of these hostels, and it's between Dublin City Council, DePaul, Ireland, YMCA, and they're working on this together, and the HSE. But it just does not make sense that these young guys and young women who are in recovery, they have come through the rehab process, they're linked in with projects, they have their lives back on track, they're doing extremely well, and now that recovery is being made very vulnerable because those currently using chaotic lives are moving into the same accommodation. So it's where is the drug-free accommodation, and where are we on that one?
Thank you.
I agree with Deputy O'Sullivan that it is a very serious issue, and the need to continue to have it in place abstinence-based facilities and programmes for people exiting drug and alcohol rehabilitation centres is acknowledged. Dublin City Council are working in partnership with the HSE and the non-governmental service providers to increase the quantum of units required for abstinence-based residential facilities, and it is expected that approximately 50 units will be brought on stream early next year. Part of the work required here is to develop protocols for the discharge of people that are exiting residential treatment to ensure a homeless prevention approach is taken. But there is and will continue to be absence-based homeless accommodation provided in the region. And if Deputy O'Sullivan has any further information on how we can assist people further, in addition to the 50 units we're providing early next year, we'll be very glad to speak to her about the individual circumstances that she has outlined.
I'm glad to hear the support and the commitment for the abstinence-based approach also. I think there's another group as well, of those who are coming out of prison, who have also managed to use the facilities in prison to be drug-free. But I think because we have a housing crisis in Dublin, this particular group are very further down on the pecking order, as it were. So I certainly will come back and I will discuss with the projects if there's any further information or suggestions that they can have. But certainly a recent example of how it was handled was not good, because it was like the first of the young people in this accommodation knew was when they saw other young people coming in with their chaotic lives. And I know at the end of the day, recovery from addiction is a personal responsibility, but we can assist it. And the last thing thing anybody wants is for people who are in recovery to relapse, because they're the people who are at the highest risk of suicide from overdoses.
Thank you.
Just briefly concord, just to tell Dr. Sullivan as well that I understand that there's a management transfer arrangement seeking to be worked out between the Paul Ireland and Dublin YMCA. Now, that has been going on, of course, the discussions about this for many, many years. But there is hope that this particular agreement can be worked out and that this transfer as well has been supported by Dublin City Council and the HSE.
Thank you.